sometimes talk to people, about the idea of existence and non-existence. People are afraid. They're afraid of what we call death because you can't imagine it. It's unknown. What does it mean? If I exist, can I cease to exist? Just because the body fails me, does that mean that consciousness, the life force, disappears as well? How can I know myself to exist, yet be removed, turned into nothing, just because this physical lump doesn't last? It would be easy to say that existence can never become non-existence. Why? Because non-existence doesn't exist. Existence has only one property, essentially, to exist. That's its purpose. It is. Science says that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only change form. Consciousness is. Consciousness is energy. It exists. So it can't cease to exist. It can't become something else other than shift, change form. Sometimes I know I am in no doubt that life is continuous, experience is continuous, existence exists. I am, I always will be, I always have been, I always will be. I don't remember. Just because I don't remember doesn't mean there wasn't before. Just because I don't have proof, even though there's an enormous body of evidence based on experience, near-death experience, out-of-body experience, psychedelic experience, that suggests there is so much more than just this physical lump. But for the purposes of the experience, in order to experience things this way, I don't have access to, generally, day by day by day, because day by day by day, moment by moment, experiencing life 1 second per second, plus all the distractions and illusion aspect, the fact that it's kind of being made up as we go along, that in a sense nothing does exist outside, everything exists within me. Even just sensory input is being processed internally, and that's where I have the experience of it. It isn't necessary to believe in some kind of afterlife, some kind of God, some kind of benevolent father figure. It isn't necessary to hold a belief in order to have some certainty, to find something that you can believe in that makes you feel good, so that you just have that. There's nothing wrong in making yourself feel, allowing yourself to feel at peace with it. I mean, after all, look at it like this. If there was nothing, if when this physical being dies, I, the consciousness that is experiencing with it, dies, goes, is no more, there is nothing there, well, there'll be nothing there to know that. So if I have a belief or a faith that there is some kind of afterlife, and I'm mistaken, there'll be nothing there to realize it. It just has ceased to be. By the same token, if I don't have a belief or a faith or some ideology, if I don't hold tightly, looking for comfort at some idea of the beyond, if I just focus on what I'm doing and don't care about all of that nonsense, and there is something, then I will discover it at the appropriate time. And if I was right, and there isn't, well, there'll be nothing there to gloat. There'll be nothing there to say, told you, look, there's nothing here. So either is fine. You can have a belief, it's okay. If it makes you feel that you can do things, you don't have to worry, it helps deal with anxiety, by all means imagine, hold on to whatever makes you feel that way, whatever helps you to get through life. And if it is true that we indeed create our own reality, then perhaps in some way, regardless of whatever the truth of it might be, perhaps you can still create your own reality, even as an afterlife idea. There'll be no way, generally, there is no way to communicate that. We experience through people we call medium, what appears to be a connection between those who have passed over and those who are still here. It doesn't ever seem fluidly, easily understandable. It seems to be very fragmentary and very odd in its behavior, and of course there are explanations for why that might be, but it's hard to accept something that isn't clearly, obviously real, undisputable, without a shadow of a doubt. And it would have to be, otherwise it might as well not bother. Yes, many people need and get comfort from hearing the words of those who say that they are in contact and pass across some kind of message that makes them feel at ease. Nothing wrong with that at all. It doesn't matter where the information is coming from, as long as the result is that you feel at ease, that you can let go of the anxiety and the worry and the shame and the guilt, or whatever it is that you carry. You can let it go because you have found a way to do so. And there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that I'll have the same experience as you. It doesn't mean that I'll discover or perceive the same thing that you do, because we're different and I don't need that necessarily. So for me, I've come to the realization that while I accept that people have experiences that leave them in no doubt, and I have also had experiences in my life that at the time have left me in no doubt, I don't carry them, I don't hold on to them, I don't wear them on my sleeve, I don't try to tell people about them, I don't want them to have to believe me. I would like them to have their own experience so that they can decide for themselves. And so that in many ways explains why we have access to what are called psychedelic. They are a form of medicine because they can do things to us, reset, unblock, enlighten, that just can't be done any other way. They can open the door, they can provide opportunity to have an experience that can be life-changing. But even something that's generally not thought of as psychedelic, but yet has powerful psychoactive aspects, we call cannabis. And it has been used in our culture and in many other cultures for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It has been seen as a medicine, and it has been used that way and is now being used that way, with very specific intentions. And there are places in the world where one can pick it up and be advised about what it is and how to use it, but really one is simply going to experiment to see if it is helpful. Many, many, many people use it. There is a difference between the way the vast majority of people use it, inhaling, burning, smoking, vaping, something along those lines. It's a quick and easy way to administer a dose. And it doesn't really matter why you're taking it or in what circumstances you're using it or with whom, although set and setting do definitely play a part. It's all taken medicinally. It all has an effect on us, sometimes in unexpected ways, often giving an experience that we weren't necessarily expecting, but yet which has benefit. But there is another way to consume cannabis, and that is edibly. It's a much slower process. It takes time to digest. It has to go through the liver, and as it does so, it is changed. So the experience that it produces is different, longer lasting, more balanced in many ways. It does depend on, again, the dose. If one is taking too much, it can completely debilitate. You'll have to go and lie down and accept the experience, especially if you weren't prepared for it. But if you are prepared for that, if you have created the right set and setting, if you have allowed time and space to internalize, which is what this experience is going to do, then by taking a strong edible and setting aside 4 to 6 hours of internal contemplation, letting the experience take you wherever it's going to take you, just like a psychedelic would, only not as strong, not as overwhelming, you might say, there is an awful lot of benefit that can be attained from it. A lot of growth, a lot of evolution, a lot of understanding and enlightenment can come from having experiences like that intentionally. It may be the way the plant was supposed to be used. It's not naturally psychoactive in its raw form. It has to be activated in order to make it edible. You can't just eat naturally growing cannabis and expect a psychoactive effect. But it could be that certainly if you leave it long enough, if it's old enough and has been dried and sort of left at room temperature, it will naturally activate if given enough time. But we can speed up the process considerably and turn something into a medicine that one can take in capsule form or in tincture. Basically, whatever is put into capsules, because you can reduce it down to such a degree that it becomes a thick, viscous, gunky liquid, almost not a liquid, it's just a very thick, gunky stuff that will go into a capsule and on the whole be stable inside it. But to actually use it as a tincture, which doesn't require so much processing and can be administered with a pipette, just a few drops in a little juice knocked back, is extremely effective. It's an extremely effective way of administering a plant that is an amazing addition to anyone's medicine cabinet because it has many uses. It has physical benefits, it has psychological benefits, it can be used topically, it can be given as a strong or as a weak dose, so it can be given to children. And what's important is that by making it from the whole plant, one single plant, it is capable of being stored pretty much indefinitely in the right circumstances. And eliminates, not that one has to, but for me I find that certainly even if it's consumed through water as a way of filtering it, just irritates my chest, creates coughing. It's not pleasant. It's a small price to pay for receiving its benefit, but if there was a way not to have to do that, then this is it. And I have made, as a result of plants that were grown specifically for this purpose, what I consider to be the finest organic tincture of cannabis I have ever tried. I haven't tried that many, but having made it myself from scratch, using only organic ingredients and love and the ability and the willingness to learn to produce something that is exceptional, I have tested it. I have been testing it and have discovered that it does the job. While we're talking about a relatively small amount, only a few plants were grown, and it's a process to extract and create the finished product. It would be nice if there were sufficient to be able to share it in a way that is sustainable, because right now it isn't. A handful of people, maybe only 1 or 2 people might ever try it other than me, because technically it is my medicine. It is made for me to use. But I understand how beneficial it is and know that it would be of benefit to you too. It's just a question of how would you use it. Not everybody has the ability or the time or the desire to grow their own plants. Not everybody has the ability or the time or the desire to take those plants and turn them into medicine. Many people grow and they stop at the flowering stage because they're perfectly happy with just smoking it. Many people grow and share and sell what they grow so that they're not really in the market for medicine. They're not offering this as a medicine. It's a recreational, enjoyable thing to take that means that perhaps one doesn't have to consume alcohol. So, while I have produced 2 versions of the medicine, one I have called clarity, awareness, realization. The other I have called presence, a real sense of here and now, complete acceptance, contentedness, peace. Each is similar but subtly different, and as a result of that, I have been using it on and off, different times, the different strains, observing the effect it has on me and determining that there is enough of a difference to be able to call one clarity and the other presence. I would like you to try it. It may be that you only need to try it once or twice. In fact, the first time you have an experience of clarity or presence, especially as you're not expecting it, you might be a user of cannabis. You might already be familiar with the effects of it. Doesn't mean that you won't experience clarity or presence. But for those who don't use it, maybe who have never used it and would never think of smoking something, there are people whose chests simply would not accept such a decision. They would probably experience the best clarity and the best presence of all, because the experience would be completely new for them, and yet there would be something about it that, while going through it in the correct setting, they would recognize as something that was real for them. They would understand why hundreds of thousands, millions of people use this substance. Why the world, perhaps for financial reasons, but yet nevertheless has decriminalized and legalized in so many places that eventually it will simply be something that is available for people to take, just like alcohol is. As abundant and as ubiquitous as alcohol is, and how dangerous and how many people suffer and die as a result of alcohol, it would be beneficial to offer something that can't be overdosed on, that there are and will never be any reported deaths of cannabis overdose, but which has the opportunity and the ability to provide protection and healing anecdotally, because many people have experienced very positive effects from a physical perspective when taking cannabis in their life. It's incredibly easy to grow, relatively speaking. It's not called a weed for nothing. There are many different strains that can handle different climates, different temperatures, different humidities, things that can be grown in the pot just as easily as they can in the earth. Pot in the pot. And many people do this. Those who have a spare wardrobe or a small attic or basement or spare bedroom often set it up in a way that allows them to grow a few plants for themselves and their friends, and to share the fruits of that and to benefit tremendously from it. I have grown plants myself under lights, and it's very rewarding. In fact, those plants, that plant was with me during my time in the van, and it sustained me for the whole time I was there. In fact, it lasted and is still lasting, because I still have some all these years later. I just don't smoke very much, as I find it, as I get older, my lungs, not being a smoker, not ever having been a cigarette smoker, I never enjoyed the act of smoking when I first started to use it. But back in the day, I only had access to hash, and hash works best crumbled into a little tobacco and rolled into a joint. And so for the first few years of my using it, I smoked joints, even though I didn't want to take the tobacco. Later I discovered there were other ways one could consume hash without needing the tobacco, and then eventually moved on to natural cannabis flowers, which can be consumed in tiny amounts through a little pipe, which don't have to come anywhere near tobacco ever. So I wanted to share this with you. I'm doing it differently. My eyes have remained closed throughout this talk, so there's no need for me to look at the camera. There's no need for me to engage you directly as if I'm looking at you, because it's an illusion. I'm not looking at you. I'm just looking at a phone. So it makes more sense that the words I say, I don't feel like I'm in a very altered state right now. Perhaps I'll try this again tomorrow when I am, and see what comes out when I don't have to be aware of visual stimulation, because obviously while I'm here, while I'm talking, I can be distracted. There's outside world going on. I'm not going to be distracted here. No one's going to come, the phone isn't going to ring, etc. But nevertheless, by eliminating some, which is why I do audio recordings far more than these video things, because I can do it with my eyes closed, and I can do it in the dark, and I can just talk, and it's easier. But there's something about having a visual, something that's there. It's not just an image that's covering up an audio recording. It is an actual video recording of me speaking live, and I'm more comfortable without needing eyes. I don't need to look at the screen. I know it's there. There's nothing I need to see. And you can see the difference in, I don't know, maybe you'll prefer it. There are people who we call channelers who both channel with eyes open and eyes closed. And I can channel with eyes open because it's almost like I'm in a daze. I'm not really looking at anything. My eyes are open, but I'm incredibly internal. And yet, so why not close the eyes? So we'll see. Thank you for listening.